So the last part of the quadratic video series that we need to know is something called the discriminant. So a discriminant allows us to show or tells us how many roots there are. So a root is when a function is equal to 0, or specifically in this case a quadratic function is equal to 0. And we're trying to find when the x positions or the x values will allow it to equal to 0. So it's like the first video we're looking at in this video series. But sometimes there might not be any solutions, and that's determined by the discriminant. So if you see this equation here, we got the quadratic formula here, right? However, in this case part here where I've highlighted, we have a root b squared minus 4ac. But we know that we can't root a negative number, right? So this is where the discriminant comes from. So we can say that b squared minus 4ac, if it's less than 0, we can't root it, right? So this means that there are no roots, i.e. there are no solutions. Sometimes b squared minus 4ac might be bigger than 0. In this case, like the examples we've done previously, there are two roots, two real roots we call it, i.e. there's two x solutions. And sometimes b squared minus 4ac might be equal to 0. In this case, it's just one repeated root. So there's just one root and it's just repeated. Okay, so there's just three different situations depending upon this b squared minus 4ac or the discriminant value, which determines how many roots there are in the solution. And this can be seen graphically. For example, if I was to sketch it, if b squared minus 4ac was bigger than 0 here, then there's two real roots. In the graph, you'll see 2 points or positions where it crosses the x-axis. If it was less than 0, then you will see that the graph will never actually cross the x-axis. It will just be above it, or sometimes it might be below if it's a negative x squared graph, right? And finally, if it is equal to 0, i.e. one repeated root, you'll see it touch the graph at one position, like this, for example, or like this if it's a negative one here. So graphically, this is shown graphically by these situations, but the main thing to know is they'll ask you how many roots there are, then you can just see or just work out the discriminant value, and then you can determine how many roots they're going to be. There's not too many questions they could ask you about this kind of concept, but you just have to be aware of how many roots there are and how to determine how many roots there are going to be.